So for the topic of chemical safety, if you have any questions, clarifications, you can use the chat box, or if you have your mic on, you can readily use your mic on. So what is chemical safety? So chemical safety involves a comprehensive understanding, so meaning it's a thorough understanding and applications of measures to prevent accidents, injuries, and environmental harm from chemicals. So this is really important in workplaces, educational institutions, homes, and everywhere where chemical is being used, or if it's not being used, even stored. Now, in terms of the key principles of chemical safety, number one really is in identifying the hazards. So what are the hazards that we need to be knowledgeable about concerning chemical safety? So number one, it's physical hazard. So this includes the properties such as flammability, if a particular chemical is flammable, where these particular chemicals can easily catch fire and lead to burns or explosions. Now, some are even reactive chemicals that may interact with other substances that will produce dangerous byproducts, while some whereas for some, they can even detonate upon a reaction with another substance. So we need to be knowledgeable of these properties of chemicals that we are storing or that we are handling, because it's really one major concern in terms of the physical hazard that it can bring to us. So number two, if not for the physical hazard that will get burned, if it's flammable, or if there's an explosion, of course, a lot of damage could be done, is the health hazard. So the sad thing about this hazard is that sometimes the outright effect is not seen. So symptoms uh, are not right away observable. Di siya ma-observe dayon. So there's really an important key knowledge in here in terms of the characteristics and properties of material. So exposure for some chemicals can affect health through pathways like, so you can have it inhaled, you can have it ingested, matulon, or you can have the usual common thing is skin contact with these chemicals. So chemicals classified as carcinogens, those that can cause cancer, while others might cause skin irritation. This is just but minor, and respiratory issues or long-term health impacts. So the major knowledge in here is that there are really chemicals that are carcinogens, and then there are chemicals that have long-term health detrimental effects. So we need to know about the chemicals really that we are handling because of this. So their pathway could be, take note, we can have them inhaled, we can have them really swallowed or ingested into our system, or a simple case of skin contact. Now, aside from being a health hazard for some chemicals or physical hazard, of course, we need not forget our home. So the environment which supports our lives. So environmental hazards. So chemicals can adversely affect the ecosystem if released uncontrollably. So that's the reason why we have agencies, government agencies that give us the range of values for certain chemicals or certain exposure, how long should be exposed for a certain environment which has the presence of these chemicals. That way, you won't have any ill effects in your health. Okay, but sad to say, we also have to think of the environment, and doesn't even um, consider the ill effects of these particular chemicals in the environment. So it does not probably directly affect us now, but in terms of its effect in the environment, it does not only affect us, but also living creatures. So it will affect the entire ecosystem in the process. Now, this includes, if I may read on, aquatic toxicity. So their toxicity for these chemicals may harm those living organisms in water. So affecting water bodies, and if they are bioaccumulated, so they get accumulated in the environment, they can disrupt the food chain. So there are a lot of things that are only observable now that hundreds of years ago are not yet observable, probably because we can uh, connect it with the long-term exposure to these harmful substances that we are handling. So probably then there are no diagnosed illnesses like the ones that we have now. And though there are not enough researches to validate this, but we can probably attribute it to the presence of the substances then that are not to the presence of the substances now, rather, that are not present than before. So that is why probably we're living in times wherein there's just a lot of things that are present, ill things that are present now that are not observable before. So we need to know and we need to be knowledgeable of the chemicals that we are handling and we are storing, or the chemicals that are present in the things that we are using. Now, next is upon identifying the hazards. So what are the hazards that are brought by these chemicals? We need to be able to assess the risks involved. So assessing meaning you need to do evaluation. So in here, you are to determine how chemicals are used. Now, this involves analyzing their pathways and identifying who or what might be exposed upon handling these particular chemicals. This includes specifically assessing the duration and the concentration of exposure. How long will you be exposed in this particular environment that has the presence of these chemicals, and what's the concentration in that particular environment? Is it tolerable? Is it negligible? Will it not affect our physical bodies upon exposure to it? Now, there are, for example, as an example, there are those that are working in hospitals. So they face patients that have varied illnesses. And there are those that are working in laboratories that handle chemicals. Now, aside from their pay, they have what we call as the hazard pay. The hazard pay take into account the things that they might be over time experiencing because of the nature of their jobs. So they have hazard pays to take care of that. But if we come to think of it, will that particular hazard pay so fees for the later on for the hospital bill or the medication that they will be needing to address what ill effects they are experiencing in their bodies? So that's the reason why we have what we call, your parents may have what we call hazard pay. Hazard may come in the form of the danger that they are exposed to, or they may come in the form of prolonged working hours, like not being able to sleep at night. So that is why those that are working in unholy hours have what we call hazard pay. Or just like what our topic is now concerning of, those that are exposed directly to substances that may have the presence of harmful chemicals. Now, aside from evaluating, we need to look into control measures. So if there's the presence of that particular chemical already and then nothing can be done about it, then what control measures could be uh, take into consideration or taken into consideration? So these are actually strategies including engineering controls, like, so hindi ma-avoid that you will be working in an environment with lots of chemicals. So there has to be a good ventilation system to reduce airborne chemical exposure. So dapat maayos ang ventilation system. Administrative controls like safety training and policies. So training of the personnel's handling these harmful substances. Policies related to the handling of these harmful substances. And mitigation through, so this is very common and this is regulatory actually required, the use of personal protective equipment such as the gloves and the masks. So in terms of risk assessment, we need to have the control measures after we have done evaluating of degree of exposure or the length of exposure to such environments, which has the presence of these harmful substances. Now, next, again, under the topic on risk assessment is the labeling and the signage. We will be knowledgeable about the thing we're handling if it is stored in a container that is properly labeled. So effective communication is vital. So labels must include the hazard symbols. So we have the skull and we have the crossbones to tell us that that particular substance is toxic. Risk phrases so should be also placed in the label itself, and even safe handling instruction. So those that prepare the chemicals in laboratories have the safe handling instruction from suppliers of the chemicals that they are using in preparing a different compound. So sometimes you don't buy a particular compound of material directly from the supplier. So what they do, they buy the raw material needed and they prepare it themselves. So in the process of preparation, there has to be safe handling instructions to follow. That way they won't be experiencing the ill effects of being exposed to these chemicals. Storage is also very, very important. It's not just like you simply place it in a bottle or a container, have it labeled, and that's it. No, you have to properly store them in the place where they should be stored. There are substances that needs to be stored at a certain temperature, and they need not be exposed to heightened temperature. So proper segregation as well to prevent unwanted reactions. So reason why bases should be um, stored separately from acids because they might neutralize. Their fumes might neutralize, and in the process of neutralization, also have some heat being released, and that would be very dangerous. So storing chemicals at correct temperatures prevent decomposition and prevent unwanted reaction as well. So they need to be stored in a place wherein they cannot react with other chemicals that they would be most reactive upon. Aside from that, they should be stored in the condition that will not uh, encourage the chemicals to decompose. Now, wearing of gloves and goggles mentioned already in the PPE a while ago, but let's talk in detail this personal protective equipment. Common are the gloves and the goggles. So these are the first line of defense, protecting against direct skin and eye contact with chemicals. So in terms of skin contact, so that's why you have the gloves, and for eye contact, you have the goggles. So your gloves must be latex, nitrile, or rubber gloves. And they should be, shall I say, not having holes. So sometimes you want to save, and sometimes the gloves that we are using, when we are unaware that they have already holes or some holes on it. You have to discard those and use gloves that doesn't have any holes. Otherwise, they it's useless using them. Okay, respirators, in the case of those who are handling substances that later on unavoidably will have some fumes. So this is used in environments with the presence of fumes or even dust or vapor, ensuring that the users do not inhale these harmful substances. The respirators, aside from the gloves and the goggles. Some will opt to use the simple mask, the face mask that we are using, but those masks are not actually based on industry standard that they will be able to really filter the air that enters your nostrils. So if you cannot find respirators, especially during the time that you will be handling harmful substances which has fumes, then have this particular mask in layers, probably use 2 or 3 layers of this mask if respirators are not available. Now, the reason why you have the lab gowns is, of course, they will be under here in the suits. So aprons and suits. So full body protection prevents contact with corrosive chemicals, which could cause severe tissue damage upon contact. So your lab gowns, as much as possible, should be all buttoned from the top down. Hindi pwede nag-abre because then it can easily catch fire. You are discouraged to use long sleeve lab gowns because that might also catch fire, especially if you're using the burner. Okay? So that's the reason why you have the suits that way. Aside from the spills that we may just simply overlook as a simple spill, they're not going to ruin our, in your case, ruin your uniform or our dress. But of course, to really protect us from the harmful effects of these chemicals getting into our skin. Now, in terms of emergency preparedness, these are things that we don't really foresee to happen. Actually, we foresee them to happen. We don't want them to happen, but they are really unavoidable. So in the case of spill response, so wala gid na bina-avoid. It was really unavoidable that there was a spill. So what do you need to do? So immediately contain the spill. So immediate containment. What does this mean? Quick actions such as utilizing spill kits. So the lab has spill kits or absorbents like sand or vermiculite. Our laboratory has a sand bucket, I think, somewhere in the door. So if there's a spill, especially if it's an acid, you don't wipe it off. So sometimes if it's far from you or it's on the working table, what we do, we use water from the faucet. We make water flow on that particular section, let's say from 5 to 10 minutes until such time that all the acids there were already diluted and flows through the drain. But if it's really unavoidable, it cannot be done that way, then you use the sun. Although the sun is also used in fire, for fire, small fires. It can also uh, eliminate fire, though it's not encouraged because we also have the fire extinguisher there in the lab. Okay, so the thing is, if there are spills and you do not know the identity of the chemical that has spilled, hindi pag-uyate, hindi pagtrapuhe. You use the sand, and then once it's already absorbed in the sand, you use something to swipe away the sand into a particular container, and then you throw it away. Okay. So in here, it was mentioned that you use the sand as absorbent or vermiculite. I think we don't have the vermiculite in the lab, but we have the sand. And neutralizing agents help minimize the spread and exposure. So water is, if you're going to ask me, water is the nearest thing that you can get hold of in the lab. You simply pour water on that area and then make sure that it flows down through the drain. Okay. Or you can have some base to mix it with, but that would be expensive because you will simply spilling the base on that spilled acid. So you don't want that. We want something economical. So that is why we have the sand there. Now, clean up procedure. So how do you clean that up? So involve clear protocols for disposing of contaminated materials according to legal environmental requirements. So in the case of a large spill that happens, so there are clear protocols of disposing of the substances that have been, shall I say, contaminated, the materials that have been contaminated by the spill, and it has to be adhered upon. Our laboratory has these protocols with them. So far, mga ordinaryo lang man nga spill ang ara nagakatabo sa aton nga laboratories. Next is first aid measures. For eye and skin contact, immediately flush it with water, and this will help remove the chemicals right away. It is not readily where it is readily absorbed by your skin because we have several skin layers. So upon direct skin contact, have your hand right away placed under the faucet and have flowing water clean up the spill on your hand. Now, it's crucial to have Iowa station readily accessible. Our laboratory have an Iowa section there. I see that before when I was handling laboratory classes. So they have it ready for any untoward cases wherein chemicals are splashed into the eyes of the student. As for inhalation, so fresh air is essential to prevent inhalation damage and severe cases. So oxygen administration or medical intervention might be needed for advanced cases. So kung may na-inhale, diretso pag-inhale fresh air, go to an environment which is, go to an open air where you can readily inhale fresh air. That is in the case when the inhalation is very small. Pero kung dako na, then there has to be a medical intervention to be done. Now, in terms of the hazardous chemical categories, they was categorized a while ago into physical, health, and environmental hazard. So let's look into the details of these substances that cause physical, uh, anything that shall will make us uncomfortable physically. Okay, so there will be these chemicals that pose danger due to their physical properties. So number one are those flammable liquids and solids. Okay, substances that can ignite easily and burn rapidly like gasoline or acetone. So hindi siya pwede lang i-heat lightly ang mga gasoline. That is why right now you cannot buy any more acetone in the drugstore. They have replace it with a something like a solvent, but acetone can never be bought anymore now from even from department stores and drugstores. So they have replaced it with a solvent that also acts like a acetone because acetone really is very volatile and highly flammable. Explosives, so chemicals that can readily release gas and heat upon detonation or impact. Bunggo-bunggo lang do tayo ma-explode siya. Such as trinitro-toluene. So TNT is trinitro-toluene. Now we have oxidizers. Now substances that can cause or enhance the combustion of other materials. So hydrogen peroxide is an example. It's an oxidizing agent. So they can cause explosion risk, no? So under pressure. So they should not be really where am I? They can cause or enhance combustion of other materials rather. So this hydrogen peroxide. Next are compressed gases. So compressed. So gases stored under pressure which can pose explosion risk. Example is propane. So this gas is highly, shall we say, dangerous. It is stored. So hindi siya dapat ma-store sa environment nga ang temperature could be easily increased. Okay, due to increase in temperature as well. So that's your propane. Then we have reactive substances, so chemicals that may react violently with water or other substances such as sodium. Okay, sodium. If you have performed an experiment before in high school, which has sodium metal, it's very, very reactive. I think in the metal category of elements in the periodic table. This one, if you simply throw it in any surface that has water, it will explode. So my students then would try to play with this in the lab. Malupok-lupok na siya, ihaboy mo siya sa zinc na may tubig. It will continue jumping and having this explosion until and when there's no sodium metal anymore. So that's how it reacts with simple water. It will cause, it's not really explosion that will ruin the zinc, but malupok-lupok siya. Until such time na wala na tubig siya nga malabutan pag lumpat-lumpat yati wala na hindi na siya maglupok. But it's a small strip of metal that you can acquire later on when you do your experiments. I'm not sure if you'll do it now in your chem or later on. So you have to make sure that it doesn't touch water. Okay, malupok na siya if it touches water. Now, health hazard, so that was the second one. So these chemicals cause adverse health effects through various expulsion routes. So inhalation, ingestion, or even a simple case of touching by the skin. So toxic, so chemicals leading to serious health issues upon exposure, even in small quantities. And even this is used as a poison, and that's arsenic. The example here is arsenic. Carcinogens, so substances identified to cause cancer after prolonged exposure. So example of a carcinogen, do you know this? Asbestos is a carcinogen. So if you happen to see asbestos, it's used in roofing materials. So if you happen to see fragments of asbestos being played by kids, take it away because it's a carcinogen. Corrosive, so chemicals that severely damage living tissue or metals on contact, like your hydrochloric acid. Okay, you know hydrochloric acid. In our language, it's muriatic acid, the one that's being used in cleaning up stains. Okay, Irritants. So such inflammation, or it can cause inflammation or discomfort to the skin, the eyes, or the respiratory tract. Ammonia is one. Irritant siya. Ang inyo ihi magdugay, irritant naman na siya sa ilong because it has ammonia. Okay? Sensitizers. So lead to allergic reaction after repeated exposure such as formaldehyde. So it will cause those that are sensitive to develop some allergic reactions upon prolonged or repetitive exposure. The example here is formaldehyde. Mutagens. What are these mutagens? These are chemicals that can cause genetic mutation. And benzene. Benzene is an example, a classic example of a mutagen. Exposure to this particular chemical may have some genes mutate, okay? And reproductive toxins. So it affects the reproductive capabilities of especially mothers, including birth defects. So that is why some infants, when they are birthed by their mothers, have these birth defects. Example are lead-containing compounds or lead-containing compounds. Lead is also a carcinogen, and it is a, shall I say, one of the main reasons why those kids of parents that are working in mining industries have sometimes developed defects because of prolonged exposure to compounds containing lead or lead rather. Then we have environmental hazards. So these chemicals pose risk to the ecosystem. So we started with this in the first slide wherein we have to know of the hazards that these chemicals poses. So acute aquatic toxicity, so chemicals that have harmful effects on marine life within short exposures. Then there are also chemicals that are that have chronic aquatic toxicity. This cause long-term adverse effects in aquatic environments. And your polychlorinated biphenyls are an example. Ozone depleters, so substances that contribute to the degradation of the ozone layer, we know that to be our chlorofluorocarbons. So these are chemicals that affect our waterways and our airways in the case of the CFCs, our atmosphere. Now, almost ending. So, you need to know what are the symptoms that is exhibited upon exposure to harmful substances. So then, of course, if it touches your eye, there will be eye discomfort or breathing difficulty for uh, those that have inhaled it. And then dizziness, nausea, headache, vomiting for those that have swallowed it, and skin irritation for those who have sensitive skin and who have, let's say, have an ample amount touch their skin. So this is the possible symptoms that you will be experiencing. How do we take care of the eyes upon exposure to such peeling? So we don't rub our eyes. We hold our eyelids open and flush with water for 5 minutes. In your case, you have your laboratory there, which has this spray for the eyes, for those that have spilled the chemicals on their eyes. Be careful not to contaminate your other eye. So kung isa lang ka mata, hindi mo siya whatever, if you have, let's say, unknowingly rubbed your eye and it's already in your hands, don't use that same hand for the other eye or else it gets contaminated. Seek additional medical attention. So all this that are suggested here are, shall they, first aid, but you need to be really looked into by the professionals. First aid for chemicals on the skin. So flush with water as soon as possible. Flush the affected area with lukewarm water. Continue rinsing it for at least 15 to 20 minutes to ensure thorough removal of the chemical. Use plenty of water to dilute the chemical and wash away any residue. So this is a detailed instruction of what you will do right away after you have spilled chemical on your skin. Remove contaminated clothing. So carefully remove any clothing or jewelry that may have been exposed to the chemical. Avoid pulling contaminated fabric over the head. So you don't take off anything that you're wearing that has this particular chemical. You simply cut that part which has the chemical because it might rub off your skin in the face and even unknowingly have your eyes also irritated. So cut it away if necessary. So you have to remove the contaminated clothing by cutting it, not by taking it off, passing your head. You have to assess the situation to identify the chemical that is the cause of the irritant or whatever it is that you are experiencing. If known, check the substance safety data sheet. The safety data sheet, the SDS, is on the label of the bottle that is that used as a container or in the container of that substance. So there are first aid instruction for such. If it's not in the bottle, the laboratory is given this safety data sheet for the chemicals that they are handling. That way, they will know what to do if something untoward happens. So there's the first aid instruction to be done. Note for symptoms. So pay attention to symptoms such as redness, blistering, or irritation. Note if there is severe pain or if the affected skin appears damaged. Okay, so it's important that you look into whether probably the skin get damaged already. And follow up. This is important. Seek medical attention. If there are persistent symptoms after you have done the first two steps or uncertainty about the severity of exposure, seek medical help immediately. You bring the label of the chemical or you take a picture of the label of the chemical or its safety data sheet to that particular healthcare provider. Do not attempt to apply any ointment or cream that is available at home. So unless otherwise, it's suggested also in the SDS of that particular chemical. So kung arada na butang sa SDS, yung nga pwede ang amuni nga cream, then you use it. But if you have no knowledge about SDS of that particular chemical, don't attempt to use any cream or ointment on the burnt part of your skin. Unless specifically instructed by the medical professional, avoid using creams or ointments or bandages over the affected area as they might react with the chemical. And observe for delayed reactions. So some chemicals may cause beyond delayed skin reactions, probably beyond 24 hours. So that is why you are asked to monitor. You monitor the area for the next first or second day. So for the next 24 to 48 hours, it's not just enough that you will have to check on it like after an hour of exposure, or if you see that there seem to be nothing unlikely that's happening on your skin. But have this particular time frame of checking the effects of the chemicals that have spilled on your skin. Now, our takeaway thoughts for this set of slides, if we're going to summarize everything that we have covered regarding chemical safety. So adhering to chemical safety practices involves really the understanding of potential risks and taking proactive measures to have them mitigated. So being knowledgeable of the chemical that you are handling makes you aware of the risk of handling them, and you know how to protect yourselves also in the long run. Ensuring proper knowledge and preparedness significantly aids in preventing accidents, injuries, and environmental damages. So by maintaining clear regulations and safety standards, so we have to adhere on government issued standards regarding this particular harmful substances. Workplaces and homes can operate safely and efficiently around these chemicals. Okay? Now, safety, since our topic is on chemical safety, safety is more than just a protocol. So actually, it's a mindset. It could not be only limited to the use of chemicals, but in the use of other substances as well, in the way we do what we do every day. So it's a mindset that enhances our quality of life and drives sustainable practices that will protect the environment and ensures that the next generation get to enjoy what we are currently enjoying as well. So by prioritizing knowledge, preparation, and protection, we can ensure that every interaction with chemicals is safe, responsible, and contributes to the health of our planet. Okay, so not just directly to us because we are directly the recipients of this, because we are the ones that are directly handling these chemicals, but also the planet per se, which is our home and the home of the future generation. Now, based on what we have covered, do you have any question or point of clarification? You may type in the chat box for any clarification. Any questions? No more questions? Sige, we'll stop sharing if you don't have any more questions.